Welcome to the final part of the exam with these two little angels, Manuela and Daniela, doing their C1 speaking exam with me, a complete exam, and then I give them feedback and I give them marks and I say how they did, and you can watch it to do the exam yourself or to see how people really do it. Remember, they have just started preparing for their C1 exam. They passed B2 in the summer of 2022, or there's Halcyon, no, it's 2023, isn't it? Ooh, I'm getting old. They passed it a few months ago. Now they've started C1. Here's how they do. They are real students. This is not prepared. Just two of my students who want to do the exam. They are real people, aren't they? With hopes and fears and dreams. So Manuela, of course, likes learning swear words. Simone from the B1 Cambridge video, who we all know and love, and British accents. And Daniela, who likes writing books. Published author we're talking about here. Foreign people. She's always meeting people from all over the world. And of course, Livrod and Gail. Who doesn't love Livrod and Gail? We're all tuned into Gail Watch with the chopper copter to get the latest Gail news, aren't we? So these are the girls doing it. Let's get into it. Let's see how they did. So speaking part 4 is going to be some questions on the same topic as part 3. Go and watch the part 3 video. It was about the impact of technology on society, specifically AI. So you're going to have some questions about technology that you should be ready to answer in some detail. How did they do? Let's watch.
Daniela, would you travel in a self-driving car?
Yeah, probably I will do, because it's an advantage that new technologies has made. It's an improvement. But on the other hand, I think it's a little bit scary to not make sure that you are driving a car and no one is driving you, so it's confusing.
Thank you. And what about you, Manuela?
I think it's great to have a car that can drive by itself, but I wouldn't trust it. And even though I may be buying it in the future, I don't think I will be using that mode because...
Okay, thank you.
So the first question, would you travel in a self-driving car? Here's Daniela's answer. And what we're looking at, as always, is does it meet the criteria of the speaking exam? What good things are there in these criteria? What things to improve? So firstly, a good answer to the question. Probably I would. She's managing the answer because straight away she's referring back to the question, but in a very natural way. Yeah, I would do. That's really nice. And putting this do on the end of the sentence to refer to travel, really natural, good grammar. New technologies has made, little slip up with the conjugation there. This should be have, since it conjugates with technology. Improvement, good vocabulary, showing she knows how to manipulate, improve, improvement. A little bit scary, the same. She's like modulating, qualifying her adjectives. Managing the answer, on the other hand. No one is driving you is also the correct use of the relative pronoun, isn't it? The indefinite pronoun, no one is driving you. It's a fairly clear answer. I'm not quite sure about this, not make sure that you are driving a car. I can sort of see she's getting at the idea that to make sure that you are not driving the car, you're the one. But it's a little bit unclear because of the grammar there, but it's not a bad answer. Then, of course, we have the typical part 4 trick. What about you, Manuela? Hopefully, Manuela was listening to the question. She didn't turn off when we said Daniela. No, she was listening to the question and she said it's great to have a car that. She uses the infinitive after the adjective correctly. She uses the relative pronoun correctly, a car that can drive by itself, correct use of the reflexive pronoun there, by itself. Trust, used correctly, good verbs. It's not the same as it is in Spanish, it's a different word. And of course, even though she's comparing her answer, be buying with the continuous tense is quite nice. And though at the end of the sentence again, it's a good answer. It's a nice short answer. It doesn't need to go on forever. So we're going to do this for each question. We're going to think. You can think for yourself, of course, watching this video. What makes a good answer? Try and answer them yourself. How could you improve it? But let's keep going because there's a few more questions in part 4.
And Manuela, do you think technology replacing people in their jobs will be a big problem in coming years?
Yes, because people need jobs to get money and can spend it on things. And if people can't have a job because a machine is having that job instead, so there will be no economy and no money to have for people, and the machines will just take over everything.
Thank you. Do you agree, Daniela?
Yeah, I agree with everything Manuela said. I think it's also scary that we're trusting a machine to do our jobs, but I think it's a great improvement that technology has made in a few years.
There we go. Second question, starting with Manuela this time. Technology replacing people, fairly typical issue that you're expected to be able to talk about at a C1 level. And she has some good answers. You need jobs too. Can doesn't sound quite right because it's still conjugating with need. So maybe need, you can't say need can. Need to be able to spend on, correct collocation. Having a job. We don't really talk about having a job, do we? A machine is taking that job, something like that. But instead, so nicely linked together, there will be no economy. This is a great illustration of why C1 is difficult. Ask a 16-year-old person to talk about the economy. Doesn't matter how good your English is, it's difficult. There will be no economy. Sounds a bit strange, doesn't it? This is where it's nice if we can learn some phrases like it will have a negative impact on the economy, or it will lead to a downturn in the economy, because there will be no economy. I can sort of see what she's saying, but it sounds a bit strange. But at C1, you're expected to be able to talk about work, finances, these kind of topics. But take over, very nice phrasal verb there. Overall, not a bad answer. Maybe could benefit from an example, as always. I always say this in every question, but the typical example is if you use the self-service checkouts at supermarkets, you are complicit in doing this. So I say, well, I can understand because the self-service checkout saves me time at the supermarket. And we still need people doing creative jobs that technology can't replace. So, a machine right now is probably not going to replace the person making the business plan for the supermarket or coming up with the advertising for the supermarket. So there's always going to be new jobs. These kind of ideas you could be talking about. And then Daniela's, well, our first example of a nice bit of interactive communication. I agree with everything Manuela said. Perfect. She was listening, and then it makes sense because she adds another point. That is, we are trusting the machine. Scaring, she's getting a bit confused with her vocab here. It should be scary, shouldn't it? We're trusting a machine to do something. Very nice vocab. And again, the relative pronoun improvement that technology has made. Okay. Bit vague, better with an example, but she's talking about the topic in a clear, fluent way. Next question.
What everyday objects do you think it would be useful to be able to 3D print, and why?
Maybe a hairbrush, because we use it every day, and it's made of plastic. So a 3D impression is probably going to do it, to nail it.
I was thinking about cars, because imagine a 3D printer of metal, and then you just have to put the
needle of metal.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think they haven't improved that at all, like that much in the few years before. So,
but it would be amazing. It would be so
it will
much
be,
cheaper.
but it will be difficult for people to develop that idea.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we have the other type of question, which is the sort of open question where I didn't say anyone's name, so you're expected to talk together a bit. And I thought it was not such a difficult question, but they struggled a little bit. We had a bit of a pause while they were thinking. A hairbrush, I like this idea with a good reason. Impression is not quite the right word, is it? Well, maybe it is. I don't know. A 3D printing is going to do it too. And then something that was unclear to me, make it, nail it. I wasn't sure. I like this introduction from Manuela. I was thinking to introduce your idea, and it's a good idea. Cars. Again, good that Daniela intervenes with an idea for vocab. Needle, printing, maybe, sort of sounds okay. That much was the correct grammar. Danny corrects herself, good. And they're clearly having a relevant conversation. They're talking about if it's possible to 3D print a car. It would be amazing, it would be, but it would be difficult for people to do that, again, using adjective, object, verb, all correctly. So pretty decent answer to what is probably a difficult question when you're put on the spot. To improve here, we need a clear idea, don't we? What are you going to 3D print? I'm going to 3D print useful little everyday items, like if something breaks on my vacuum cleaner, then I can just print the piece and I can fix it myself, so I don't have to send it away to the factory to be repaired. Or window, I'm looking at a window and I think, these little things that like screw the window down or something, I could 3D print it and it would be much easier. Or a light switch, I can 3D print my light switch to have a custom design on it that I like. So maybe look around and come up with ideas like that and practice this skill of weird question, gotta say something, gotta expand on it. Right, let's go on to another question. There's a couple left.
Daniela, are you a person that is naturally good with new technology?
Not at all. I'm a little bit old for new technologies. My sisters, for example, they are younger than me. They're younger than me, and they are pretty used to technologies, but I don't. And I don't really like that kind of technology, so.
Thank you.
So another question related to technology, a bit more of a personal one. And it's not a bad answer. Again, we're lacking specifics and examples, but not at all. Very nice response to the question. We could also put that in discourse management because it's a natural way to answer the question. You're too old for something, correct grammar. Giving an example of the sisters. Maybe we could see my sisters, for example, they grew up using tablets, so they're much better with these online games and things than me. To be pretty used to something, very nice. Again, qualifying the adjectives he's using. I don't is not right though, is it? It should be I'm not, because it's I am. They are pretty used to, I'm not. But again, it would be nice to expand this with an example. Manuela's question.
And Manuela, what age do you think is appropriate for children to be exposed to new technology?
If we're talking about a first phone that you can have social media on, I think like first school, like first year of high school maybe, when you are 12 or 13, because you are realizing what social media is and how it works and how exposed you can be.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree, Danny?
I don't. I think when we first go to the high school, we are 13 years old, and I think a kid is not that mature by that time. I'm almost 17, and I still think I don't have the right to have social media because it's harmful for me to have it. So.
Thank you. That is the end of the exam.
And then that's the end of part 4. So we had one more question, which is when should kids be exposed to technology? Lovely introduction from Manuela. If we're talking about phones, which is the obvious thing to be talking about, so she's identified a good topic that you can have social media on. That's really impressive grammar. The preposition at the end of the sentence, to have social media on your phone, that you can, really nice. High school, natural, culturally appropriate vocabulary. You are 12 or 13, sounds basic, but a lot of people would say when you have or when you are with 12 or 13, but no, when you are 12 or 13. Realizing what social media is, using like the indirect question, what social media is, not what is social media, how it works, how exposed you can be, using how for the degree of something. It's a really, really nice answer, really great answer. And then Danny's is also pretty good. Bit of a controversial one, saying 17-year-olds shouldn't have phones, but it's a clear answer. I understand what she means. She gives a reason, not mature, it's harmful, you don't have the right. Little mistake with the high school, of course, it should be high school. Not that mature, very nice expression, by that time, good marker of time. Almost still, again, like qualifying her ideas, adding nuance to the ideas. To have the right to do something, great. And then harmful, showing she can manipulate grammar. So that's part 4. Part 4 in summary then, the end of part 4, what have we learned? What do you think? How do you do it? I would say, same as the other parts, half the battle is getting an idea. So you need a clear idea, then you can express it and you can think, okay, if I'm talking about this idea, maybe there's some specific vocab I can use. Maybe I can give a reason, a little story, an example, something a bit interesting to spice up my answer to make it a bit more impressive. That's what you need to practice. You can do it with lots of questions online. You can watch my videos. You can record yourself. You can do it with friends. That's how you practice part 4. Okay, since this is the last video in the series then, let's get to the overall results. Would they pass? Based on my opinion as a teacher who's had hundreds of C1 students by now, and I've seen lots of results, and I more or less have an idea of what is needed to pass. Spoiler, yes, I think they would pass. Mainly because they are good at communicating. It's very clear, we need to remember maybe their grammar's not perfect, maybe their vocab's not perfect, maybe they don't say a clear idea on this weird question. But it is so impressive to sit there for 15 minutes and talk fluently in English. That's the level we want. That's a C1 level. Complex ideas expressed. There's never a moment where they don't really understand what we're talking about. It's pretty good. They would pass. Why? Let's go through the 5 criteria that we looked at. Well, first of all, grammar. I think they would each get a 4 out of 5 because they are really quite impressive with their grammar. Simple and some complex. And you can go through each part as we did and think about what stands out as correct here, as good. And we can see wide range of effective grammar, examples in all the kind of things you should be doing as I went through and looked at it. Pause and try and understand what all this means if you want, but it's the kind of thing that you would want to be seeing in an exam. For vocabulary and lexical resource, similar, very, very good. Manuela's, I think, is slightly higher because she has a bit more specific vocab. Like, for example, in part 2, talking about children and development, children can look up to teachers or adults. It's a great specific phrase. And in part 3, talking about assignments. Daniela has good vocabulary, but she tends to stick to more like general phrases that would fit for whatever topic. So she doesn't quite get the same mark there. To improve would be think about what specific words can I use for this topic. For the discourse management, this one's a really difficult one because this is like, it's difficult in your native language to be able to talk clearly and fluently on a topic in a way that someone understands. Communication is not easy. It's the two minds problem, isn't it? But I think Manuela would just about pass. Remember, 3 is a pass, isn't it? Because it's 5, so 3 out of 5 is 60%, which is more or less what you need to pass. She's fluent and clear. Part 1 was not so great because she was quite limited. Part 2, she answered both points very well, the photos. Part 3, she organised the ideas well. And part 4, really nice discourse markers, like introducing ideas, giving clear answers. Daniela sometimes lacks a bit of clarity. I'm thinking in part 2, for example, it was a bit repetitive. There wasn't such a clear, different idea for the photos where she talked about feeling good at the gym. In part 3, she missed the point a little bit in some of these questions about new technology, about AI, like Word and Excel. We're not really talking about this kind of technology taking over jobs. I think that could have been a bit more relevant, so she could lose a mark there. And in part 4, lots of nice cohesive devices. So those are the 2 first, vocab, grammar, vocab, and discourse. Then pronunciation. And this one, yes, they're both very, very clear. They both have clearly had lots of time with English people, with English songs, with traveling. It's very easy to understand them for me compared to some students. Manuela has a nice little bit of an American twang thing going on. Daniela, her accent is fine, but sometimes she could make more of an effort to enunciate clearly. It's a bit mumbly at times. Maybe when she's doubting her vocab or grammar, she goes a bit so it could be a bit clearer, but it's still fine. It's rare. Well, in my experience, teaching lots of kids who have lots of hours of English, pronunciation shouldn't be a problem. Normally it's not something you need to, in my opinion, in my experience, work on like explicitly. It's just time, dedicating lots of time to it, and it comes naturally. With the advantage that most of the kids I teach have been doing English since they were 3 years old, which obviously helps. And the final one, interactive communication. They're really comfortable together, and you can see they initiate and respond, they talk to each other, they maintain and develop, they negotiate. This they definitely do very well, with the advantage again being friends, knowing each other helps with this. They're inviting each other, they're responding. Interactive communication, no problem, 4 out of 5. Not giving them 5 on anything, because 5 is like super, like imagine a very well-spoken, well-educated native speaker. That's how I like to imagine a 5. And they're not quite there yet. They could improve a bit more still. 5 is what your teacher should get, not the student, for a while. And then there is one more, isn't there? There's one more. Do I need to minimize this? We don't really need to be looking at this band. But the final criteria is global achievement, which is like the big idea of, are they communicating well? And I would say Manuela definitely very confident, talking on all topics. Daniela, same, maybe 1 point less just because of the lack of coherency in a couple of examples, like the technology thing we talked about, which gives Manuela a total of 23 and Danny 19. 60% needed to pass. They both pass. Well done, girls, no problem. And that's the end of the speaking exam. Come back next week for different type of videos, more ChatGPT videos, more exam tips and that kind of thing.